Welcome to Beyond the Frontline podcast, where your host, U.S. Air Force veteran Donna Hoffmeyer, will help you transition from the front line to the home front. Listen every other Wednesday as we'll bring great conversations, resources, tips, and feel-good stories that will resonate and relate. Now, here's your host, Donna Hoffmeyer.
Hey everyone, it's Donna again with another wonderful episode of Beyond the Frontline. And this week we want to talk celebrities. So every week we always have something kind of interesting that walks in the door. And it's funny because I got this email and they're like, hey, we'd love to be on your podcast. And I see this information on a show called Office Joe. And I was like, what is this? So we are going to talk about veterans coming out of the military and getting into various areas, and one of them being into what we're talking about now, which is the entertainment field. I know a couple people in the entertainment field. By no means do I know, I'm not that good. I don't know big celebrities or anything, but I know some that are up and coming. And I've got one that's probably pretty well known getting out there in the veteran community, and this is Nick Palmisciano. How are you, Nick?
I'm good. Thanks so much for having me.
All right, so let me tell you a little bit about Nick. I'm going to tell you all the really cool things because he's actually pretty humble. Him and I have talked, and for everything he does, he's actually a very grounded guy. So let me give you the background on him. He's a New York Times.
We don't have to make.
Yes, we do.
We can cut right to the chase.
We can cut to the chase, but I'm going to give some highlights. See, this is what I'm talking about. It's the humble, which is great, and I truly appreciate it. But on the other side of it, I do feel like you have done some pretty cool things. So I'll just give you some highlights, or give the audience some highlights. So New York Times bestselling author. He's an award-winning filmmaker and entrepreneur. He is a co-founder of Save Our Allies, which is an international rescue organization. And most importantly, a former grunt.
That's right.
Does that summarize that?
That was a nice short, that's perfect. That's perfect.
I keep it simple. I get you. I am not the person that likes when everybody starts looking at you and puts the limelight. I'm like, ooh, no, thank you.
I donated my time recently to speak at a nonprofit, and they did a bio that lasted 10 minutes. It was one of the worst moments of my life. I was like, oh my God, this needs to stop. It just needs to end.
That happened to me, but I did it to myself unknowingly. I had to go speak at a book event, and they said, write your bio. But let me back up. I was just a book event. I was just going to be there.
Yeah.
And then it was, can you speak at it? And I was like, sure. Well, by that point, that bio went in. And I thought they just needed it to kind of pull some highlights off of and say, this is who she is.
But they read it verbatim. Yeah, that's exactly what happened, except instead of asking me for a bio, because I have a short bio that's 6 lines.
Yeah.
They pulled it off of a website, and it was it went on and on and on. And I was like, man, this is painful.
Yeah.
And it was painful in the audience. It was painful for me. But anyway.
Yeah, no, I feel you. I'm laughing because you actually just turned pink when I was reading
I'm reliving it. Yeah, I'm reliving the moment. It's
I can see you. You're no, thank you. I know. I'm it heated up in here because, and that's a common thing with military, right? Where the ones that, and I'm gonna preface this, that the ones that are really doing things, one of the big signs is that they're pretty humble. And let me just back up. It's not that all people aren't doing stuff in the military. Everybody's doing things, but we're not boasters. So when you do have somebody in the military that's really boasting, and you question stuff like, who are you? What did you do? Because the ones that are really, really doing things, you actually may not know. They're actually pretty quiet. Sure. And those are the humble heroes in the background. So yeah, I get all of it. So let's kind of start with you. So what I kind of want to talk about, I was joking around saying, hey, we're talking about celebrities and entertainment field and all that. But I kind of want to talk about how you came from military life and how your journey to evolve to where you're at. And we're going to end it talking about what just got launched, which is Office Joe. And we're going to talk about that because I watched the whole series. And so I thought it was pretty cool. I like what you did with it. So I'll let you start.
Yeah, when I got out of the military, I had what should have been like the easiest transition imaginable. Left the military and went directly to grad school. So I was on terminal leave for literally like the first 2 months of grad school. So nobody should feel bad for me because I was at Duke. There's like, it's as soft of a landing as you can have. But at the same time that I was getting out and starting my new life, one of my favorite soldiers, a guy by the name of Bill Mayer, was killed in combat. And so, right out of the gate, the guilt associated with getting out, with losing my friend, with, should I be getting out? Should I be staying in? Would things have been different if I was there? All those kinds of questions that a lot of people have wrestled with. I'm certainly not the first. Kind of started the process for me, in kind of a negative light. And it's not that I didn't do well at grad school. I did well, and probably my classmates looked at me and said like, "Oh, he's thriving here." But I was at the time, so unhappy, even though I had wanted to get out. I had made that decision like, hey, it's time to get out. I was so unhappy that I was considering going back in. I was recruited by some government agencies and considered doing that work. And, a whole lot of like other things like that, where I was wondering if, the path that I was on was the right one, the wrong one. I got the Fortune 100 gig. Again, like nobody should feel bad for me. I was making more money than anybody in my family had ever made. And I was thriving, again, on paper. But mentally, I was like descending further and further into unhappiness and starting to ask myself, like, what's the purpose of this? And, when I got out, a lot of military people, and you hear it from, officers, enlisted, whatever, they talk about, hey, when I get out, I'm going to make real money, and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And, these kind of feelings that we have about ourselves. And, what I found very, very quickly is that none of that was very important to me at all.
Yeah.
And so I was a young man, junior executive, making good money. And I was as unhappy as I had ever been in my entire life. And so it kind of culminated when I kind of took something into my own hands, and I ended up landing our company on the David Letterman show by writing this weird letter that I thought was hilarious and sending some products, and it worked. And David Letterman thought it was hilarious. And I got in trouble for it because I didn't ask anybody's permission. And they were right. I should have asked permission. It was a multi-billion-dollar company. You can't mess around like that. But in my head, I was like, this is obvious. Like, I'll just do it. And so I realized very quickly that my creativity and the way that my brain worked probably wasn't going to be rewarded, and I was going to have to kind of become something very different. And so, at that point, I still wasn't ready to quit because, again, every human being in my life was like, you made it. You served in the military, you did West Point, you did Duke, you got the Fortune 100 gig, like you're good, American dream fulfilled. But I was miserable. So I started a hobby. That hobby was an apparel brand called Ranger Up. And so like a lot of entrepreneurs have this they had a vision and they were going to turn it into this thing. Like, I don't have that story. I was bored and I missed not necessarily all of the BS associated with service, because there's a lot and we all know it, no matter how much we attach rose-colored lenses to it. But I missed the camaraderie and the people. And so I built this thing to kind of, truly, every time I made a shirt or I wrote an article, I was trying to amuse the people that I served with. I picture them and I'm like, would Bill think this is funny? Would Adam think this is funny? Would Sarah think this is funny? And that's the way my brain worked. And so that hobby started growing while I was, working at this Fortune 100 gig. And I got the opportunity to get promoted. And my boss called me into the office and said, "Hey, you're getting a promotion, and your total comp is going to jump about $100,000 a year." And I was already making more money than I needed. And I went home and I thought about it all weekend. And I came in on Monday and I said, "Hey, I'm going to leave." I said, "It doesn't have to be now, but I'm letting you know that I've made the decision. I've got to get out of here." And he was at first really upset, like, "Where are you going? You going to a competitor? Like, we might be able to match." And I was like, "No, I just told him the truth. Like, this is my situation. Like, I feel, like I am not doing what I'm meant to do, and I need to find a creative outlet, and I have this hobby." And so I quit. And I went from not having to check my bank account, not even thinking about money, to almost bankrupting myself in about a year. And there was a lot of other things that happened. I got a divorce, and I was a dad with a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old for a while. So there were a lot of like things all kind of happening at once, but it was hard. And so it wasn't this thing like, I needed to create a military brand. I know a lot of people do that now, and there are jokes about it. But for me, it was like, I made the decision. I even have an email like to my dad that's like, "I'll be happy if I can just get to the point where I'm making like 40, 50 grand a year doing this. I'd rather do that than do what I was doing." And so at my worst moment, I had $57,000 in credit card debt, and I had $1,300 in the bank.
Let me ask this. Do you think, I was writing down some thoughts that popped in my head. So one, when you were, everybody was, you keep saying, "Don't feel bad for me," because I was doing well on the outside, right?
Yep.
But we're all masters of masking, right? So all they saw was this really intelligent guy, hitting it every time. Duke, West Point, Duke, corporate, Fortune 500. And it's funny, even, just talking to you now, you can see the angst in you just going back to that time. So in my head, I'm like, oh, that was some serious masking you were doing, and high functioning people are masters at that stuff, right? So you're withering away. And then you said to me just now, yeah, so, I had to leave. There were other things going on. I was getting a divorce and this and that. And so do you feel that unraveling that was happening was just affecting everything around you? Do you think that it impacted that way? Or
I mean, I think potentially. I think a journey that every person has to go on is, and this is going to sound harsh, is realizing that nobody cares about what you're doing. And the sooner you realize that, the more free you are. And I think that I was on a journey where I was doing all of the things you were supposed to do. And so, like, in a weird way, I was getting all A's. Like, again, I got into a great college, and then I became an infantryman in Ranger School and deployment and grad school and the Fortune 100 gig. And it's like, boom, 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 doing the right things. And I think even though I didn't think what people cared about me, there was a huge part of me that basically was like, suddenly I was getting an F.
in life.
Because hey, I failed at marriage, which is the ultimate failure. My startup, I quit my job, and everybody in my life was like, "This is fucking stupid." I'm sorry, I don't know.
No, you can. You're good. You're good.
Everybody in my life was like, "This is stupid. What are you doing? Like, you're gonna quit this job to start a t-shirt company? Like, are you insane?" And and there were a lot of people that were like, "This is just an early midlife crisis," and all those kinds of things. But even as I was, I was renting out 2 rooms in a buddy's house, one for me, one for my kids. I was living incredibly small because I had no money. My friends were all on a similar track that I had been on. They were all going on big vacations and doing this crazy stuff. And every Facebook post is, some great life moment. And I am like not living like that.
Yeah.
But for some reason, I was exponentially happier than I had been, a year or two previous. And so, despite all the hardship, despite everything that was going on in my life, on paper, like, objectively speaking, if you were like a person looking at me, like, Nick 2 years prior was a winner, Nick 2 years later is a loser. But,
But
like,
were
why,
you? Because
why was I happy?
in
Well,
the
I mean, it
in
all
their
depends.
world, in their like in from you looking from their perspective, you're looking at through their eyes, going, yeah, now they see the winner, now the loser. But then
Sure.
internally, you're like, I became the winner. Like I am being true to myself now.
Yeah, I would say for me, it's even different than that. There is really no winning and losing.
Yeah, I think those just terms we grab for
Yeah.
identifiers, but yes.
So that's where I am now, is I do the things that I want to do because I want to do those things. Maybe they will work out and they will, and I'll be rewarded financially or otherwise for them. And maybe they won't work out, but I've done the things that I want to do. And so, as I get older and you know,
Wiser.
life moves so quickly.
Yes.
My kids, like I have a son that's deployed right now.
Yeah.
I remember, feeling very old, at the age of 23, sitting in a hard site, like running my platoon, and I'm looking at my kid who's the same age, and I'm just like, man, like he's a kid,
Yeah. He's a
and he
baby.
isn't. He's an adult, and he's paid those dues, and he's doing all those things. But that was a blink of an eye, and so here I am, many years later, and I don't want to have regrets. I don't want to sit here and go, oh, I should have done a book. I should have done a TV show. I should have done a movie. I should have tried this company. I would rather do it and fail than not do it. Because then it's like, you sit around going coulda, woulda, shoulda. Like I don't really do that. I just go for it, for better or for worse. And that generally has brought me a lot more happiness. But I wasn't, that took a while to get there.
Well, do you think those hard times is what helped you be fearless?
Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
Because there is no worse moment in my life than going through a divorce and being broke and worried about whether or not I had forever changed my kid's life in a bad way. And like there, I'm not, I do not suffer from the very common affliction of suicidal ideation. But if there was ever a point where it occurred to me, like that was the moment. And the anchor for me was always, I'm not doing that to my kids.
Right.
But there were definitely moments where I was like, what is wrong with you? Like looking in the mirror, what is wrong with you, Nick? Like, why did you do this? And I think a lot of people go through that, and it often happens in transition. And it's not always military transition, although I've seen military transition be a huge part of it. It can be divorce, it can be losing a job, it can be, any number of things that kind of change who you think you are, put you in an uncomfortable spot for a prolonged period of time. Like transition is really hard. And
Yeah.
I think it's especially hard for a group of people like veterans where, and we like to joke about the Air Force and the Space Force and stuff, but regardless of what service you're in, you're told pretty much early on, like, toughen up,
Yeah.
be tough, endure. And even saying, I'm not doing that well right now is hard.
Oh, yeah.
and in your head, you're being judged as incredibly weak. And it's not until recent years, and I credit, the generation that is serving now with making it a little bit more acceptable to, not to be a wuss, but to say, hey, we did some hard things and it is having an effect on me. But for me, what I've seen is not, and if you look at the data, there are more non-deployed veterans, non-combat veterans that are taking their lives than
Yes.
combat veterans. It's not, I don't think it is a matter of, in most cases, like that people did, hard things and they're not over those. What I see is it's more of like the scene in First Blood when he's like, over there, I could drive a tank, I was in charge of people, I was doing the most important missions, and over here, I can't do anything.
Purpose, value. Like that,
Nope.
we were given that.
Yes.
You came in and you had a purpose and you had a value, and
That's right.
that was like, it was issued to you. Here you go,
Yes.
right?
That's right.
And I noticed that, and it's going to might sound weird when I say this, but I kind of joke that I could go into a room of veterans and I can pick out the majority of the people that never made it to retirement. No problem. And people are like, well, how would you know that? I say, because they're the ones that are the most decorated. And I don't say that as a dig. That is not to be a dig.
Sure.
It's symbolic to me. It is symbolic that it was taken away from them before they were ready. That they didn't get to close the book, right? And so they still hold that very near and dear to them. Whereas the people that went to retirement or they closed their own chapter, I closed mine. I did not want to promote again because I knew what my options were and I didn't like them.
Sure. Yeah.
And so I did. I closed the door. I didn't do the schooling I needed for promotion, but I had already thought through all that. If you get medically boarded or you have to separate for some reason or you get separated,
Yep.
and it's out of your control, and then
Yeah.
all of us.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
I've seen that a lot. Guys and girls that were medically separated and they felt like they still had something to contribute.
Yes.
Like, hey, listen, even if I can't do infantry anymore, I can definitely sit in a talk, or I could do this.
Yeah.
And the military made the decision for them. They have a hard time. I completely
Very
agree.
hard time. And so I've watched that over and over. And, one of the things that we try to do, and you're doing this in your way, and we all have a way of doing it, is we're trying to get them engaged to say, you still have a purpose, you still have value, right? There is still something there for you. And I agree. Like, I always joke around when people ask me, like, what is my business? And, I do some advocacy work. I'm like, well, I'm the person that looks under the desk or in the closet. And I'm like, oh, you veteran, come on out, like that. And I say that kind of jokingly, but it's to get these people comfortable in this other world, right? Because they're still holding on to that military world. And when you lose all your value and all your purpose and you feel like there's nothing left and that last light goes dim, that is when we have the problems.
Yes. And then also the lack of tribe, right?
Yes.
So when you're in the military, you get a divorce, like, all right, yeah, you're moving back in the barracks and life sucks, but you're surrounded by a bunch of people that care about you.
Yep.
And even if you're kind of a jerk and they don't all like you, they're not going to let you starve. They're not going to you're going to have a place to sleep. You're going to, if you blow all your money if you're a 20 nothing and you blow all your money, the second day of the month, you're still going to eat. You're still going to
somebody's going to help you. Our terms of endearment are very different. A friend of mine said to me one time, I was laughing. She goes, so I meet my girlfriend and her friend brought a friend, and she goes, and now my girlfriend's civilian and the person she brought was military from another branch. So my girlfriend was Army. This person was, I don't know, Navy or something. And she said, of course, immediately what ensued. I'm like, oh, yes, here come the jokes, and slam the Army or the Navy or the Air Force, whatever it is, right? And so here comes the terms of endearment. And she goes, I wish you could have seen my friend's face. She's like, my civilian friend. She goes, she was like horrified. And for us, we were like, yeah, there you go. She's like,
Yep.
you talk to each other like that? Yeah, that's how we relate. Like, so,
Yep.
all right. So you go through all this, you start Ranger Up,
Yep.
and then from there, because you're like me, I have to giggle, like you get bored. And you're like, what else? So what happened with Ranger Up and moved you on?
Yeah. So, Ranger Up grew to be a really significant 8-figure brand. Life was good for a while, and I met Jared Taylor and the crew that is now Black Rifle, but back then they had this tiny little startup called Article 15.
Mm-hmm.
And in the early days, before they even launched that company, I used to share all of their content. At its peak, Ranger Up had, millions of fans. And so I used to share their content and kind of help them grow a little bit. I really liked them because they were unique. They were doing something different. And they launched Article 15, and that started doing pretty well. And Jared came to me and said, hey, I've always wanted to do a Hollywood film. And I said, me too, because I had been making movies since, like high school, little silly movies and stuff. And so Jared and I, and then ultimately, the whole team got together and Jared had a script, like a first edition of a script, that he was playing around with Vince Vargas and some others. And then we came together and we started really working on the script and coming up with something that could be a Hollywood movie. We started pitching it. We got laughed at. Hollywood was like, so let me get this straight. You're going to put, 6 non-actors in a ensemble comedy, and you're going to try to sell this, and it's going to cost, $500,000 or something. And we were like, yeah. And they're like, yeah, no, that's not how it works. And so we went to a bunch of meetings in Hollywood. We got laughed at. And so then we were like, well, screw it. We're going to try to raise the money on Indiegogo, And so, we launched a crowdfund, and our goal was $350K. We were each going to throw in some money on top of that. And we raised like $350K in less than 24 hours.
Oh my God.
And then it was $500,000, and then it was 1.5. And all of a sudden we had this budget to do this really cool, indie film. And it became the only independent film ever to top the charts on Amazon, and it went to number 2 on iTunes. And that movie's called Range 15.
Range 15.
So it was a combination of Ranger Up and Article 15. So those two names together made Range 15.
Wow.
And so then I really had the movie bug. I wanted to do more. And we were trying to figure out, I actually did I wrote the beginning of a sequel, and Ross Patterson wrote a different sequel. And, so we were playing around with all these ideas. And right around that time, they launched Black Rifle Coffee, and that started taking off. And so then they got very busy. And then, growing pains of Ranger Up, I had some challenges. And so all of that kind of got shelved. And then I got to a point where Ranger Up was starting to become for me what the corporate gig had become. It was like, instead of getting to be Nick, I almost had to be, or felt like I had to be the Ranger Up guy. If that makes sense.
Yes.
But it was such a part of me, because when you start your first company, it's your kid. The only way I can describe it is like, the first dog you have before you actually have kids. Mm-hmm. No other dog will ever replace that dog in terms of status.
Agreed.
For me, that dog was a Jack Russell Terrier named Diesel. But where it's like, like the dogs I have now, they're great. I love them. But it's not like with Diesel, where that, like that dog got all my time. That, it was a different thing. So that's the way your first company is. And you've sacrificed so much. The number of times that I almost bankrupted myself for Ranger Up, like it's, most people cannot handle those swings. That's why people that have been entrepreneurs for a while, like we all, even if we don't like each other, there's some respect because you can't be an entrepreneur without the risk.
Right.
So I ended up selling the company to an investment group out of Columbus, Ohio. And my contract was I had to work for them for a year. And then, I was welcome to stay on after that, but I had to stay around for at least a year. So I did that. And right around the time that year came up, COVID was happening. And they were like, hey, we're doing layoffs across the board in all of our portfolios. So they kind of outlined people that they wanted me to lay off. And I was like, hey, we're kind of on the up right now. Like, I don't think this makes sense. And they were like, well, you're not running it anymore. It's not your call. And I was like, well, how about we do this? I'm the most compensated employee. Like, I'll step down. And they were like, we don't want you to step down. Anyway, long story short, I stepped down with the intention of, one, I wanted to do something new. Two, that would save the employees. And then they were like, well, okay, you step down, so we're going to lay everyone off in North Carolina. They can move to Columbus, but we're not going to run two offices if you're not heading one. And so I went in and I said, hey, guys, I got some good news and some bad news. Like the bad news is that, on next Friday, you're going to be laid off. Everybody's like, what the hell, Well, what's the good news? I said, well, the good news is, the Monday after that, if you want, you can start in my new company at the same salary.
Which didn't exist yet.
Did not exist yet. So they were like, well, what's the new company? And I said, I don't know. I'll tell you on Monday. And so, I kind of went home and I called my friends, I called my dad, called my mom, just like, I had already made notes to myself of what I thought I was good at. But I asked all of these people, like, what do you think I'm actually good at? And it kept coming back to, writing, storytelling, video composition, and just marketing as a whole. And so I was like, all right, well, what the work I did for Ranger Up, I feel like I could do that for other organizations. And we already have a team that's good at this. So that's where Diesel Jack came from. And my dog Diesel, the one I talked about, he lived to 15. He had passed about a year, 2 years previous. Mm-hmm. And so he was still, so our logo is literally a sketch of Diesel's face, holding it. And because he was a Jack Russell, that's where the Jack came from. And that's where the fuel idea came from, because, we pour fuel over your
Wheaties.
There you go. That's right. So that's where Diesel Jack came from. So it was all, again, just like the first time, like I am definitely not Steve Jobs. I didn't have this miraculous vision. It was like, man, it sucks that they're going to can all my employees. I was going to take a CMO job at a mid-level firm and make a lot of money and not be stressed for once, but
so much for that.
Let's see if we can start a marketing agency. And so I've been doing this for 4.5 years. Well, actually more than that. Our 5-year will be in this February.
Did they all go to you? Like all the people that got laid off?
Yeah. I mean, they're not all here anymore.
But they all started with you, right?
They all started. Yeah, everybody started with us. Yeah.
That says something. That's a huge thing. And here's a curiosity question. So you Monday say, here's our new company. Mm-hmm. And how are you paying them?
My business partner and I lent a bunch of money to the company to start it.
Yeah. And I say that so people understand, like, the respect, right? When you start a business and you are, that entrepreneur, those are the risks that you're taking. You're betting on yourself is what you're doing.
Yeah, it was scary. It was, multiple. Yeah, the company was lent multiple six figures in order to start, because we had a not insignificant staff.
Yeah. Yeah. How many people? did you start with that came over?
I want to say, I think it was me plus 7.
Phew. And they're not making 10,000 a year.
They're not.
I
They're
mean,
not.
wow. So you start this company, Ranger Ups, now gone, and now you're on, and it's, and I will tell you, I think what hilarious is, you know, it's the adrenaline, right? We're adrenaline junkies, so maybe we're not getting it, you know, like when I flew into Bosnia during the war or the campaign, and, you know, or you were doing your missions or, you know, running a team. We don't have that anymore, right? So we're going to find
Right.
it somewhere else. Somehow we're going to find that. So you do this. Now you have Diesel Jack.
Yep.
And the premise of that, Diesel Jack Media, what were you doing? What was the thought process in this?
I had hired 3 or 4 marketing agencies when I ran Diesel Jack
Mm-hmm.
to see if they knew things we didn't know. And the answer was no. They were literally always worse than the stuff that we had taught ourselves. And so I'm like, well, these are 4 big companies that I hired. They weren't mediocre companies. They were all, so I was like, I feel like I can do this better than they can.
Yeah.
And so that was the thought process. And I brought on a guy that I had a lot of respect for, Albert Cho, that, you know, joined me, you know, as a partner. He had been involved in a number of agencies before. So we kind of brought some agency experience with him. And that's how we started. And, you know, we've reinvented ourselves 3 times over the last almost 5 years. But now, you know, we do, at one point we had about 35 clients and it was crazy busy. And now we only have a handful of clients and we go very deep with those clients. And we make our, you know, original content. So we've done a few documentaries, but the big moment for us was, you know, last December, we shot a TV show that I wrote called Office Joe.
Let's talk about it. I think we lean into it because this was the pinnacle here that I went and bought it, so you can get it on Prime. And right now you can buy the series.
It's available on Amazon. It's available
Yep.
on Apple and also, you know, Google Play /
Oh yeah, Google Play. So I went and got it. I watched the whole series. There's 6 out right now. It came out November 8th. Is that correct?
That's right. Came out November 8th.
Yep.
It's done really well. It's really cool to see, you know, thousands of people have purchased it and it keeps doing well. And we've had really stellar reviews, which is awesome. But Office Joe is a comedy shot in the same style as, you know, Parks and Rec, The Office, you know, Modern Family, etc. Yes. And, you know, where the characters occasionally break the 4th wall and talk to you. And it's about this guy, Joe Hauser, that, you know, he was an infantryman, spent some time overseas, and then he got injured and, you know, wasn't going to be able to do the same job he spent a lot of time in the S3 shop, decides to get out. And the show starts with him trying to pick up his DD-214 and getting, you know, going through all the BS that you have to go through sometimes in the military. And he's so frustrated. He starts the day super happy, and by the time he actually leaves the military, he's so pissed off. He strips his uniform off and leaves it on the curb and drives away essentially naked
into
his civilian life. Into his civilian life.
Go ahead, I'll tell you after.
And then, you know, he drives across the country and gets there, you know, just in time to start his new job as a graphic designer at a marketing company. And he started his graphic design journey drawing on the inside of porta potties. So
you want to tell them what they were? Well, maybe we won't because you got to get to that later. We got
to leave.
Yeah, we do. I'm giggling just thinking. Well, I warpedly laughed, and I told you this when we met earlier. When I saw him stripping off his clothes, I was like, oh my God. And it brought me back because that actually is a real thing. I had a patient, a service member, and he had some trauma and he couldn't wear his uniform. Like literally, if he wore his uniform, he would he couldn't. He'd go into like an anxiety attack and stuff. And unfortunately, in the program he was in with us, he had to be at work when he wasn't getting his medical care, right? And so we get a call, and we're a new office. That's why I think I was giggling about the whole thing, right? So this new office, and we get a phone call, and they're like, "So, Sergeant so and so," and it's funny and it's not. It's heartbreaking, but it's warply funny. He's like, he's in the closet in his boxers. We're like, "Excuse us," right? And so, I will say on a good note, we got him the help he needed, and those were good things. And he did, he needed that, and it was good. But when I saw that, I was like, oh, Lord, that frustration level.
Oh, yeah.
And what I like about, like, when I first saw it, I didn't know what to expect. I had no really context. I hadn't even talked to you. I just grabbed it and like, I'm going to watch it. So I did. I definitely thought The Office, Parks and Rec, that kind of type thing. Yep. You did a really good job about taking really tough topics and spinning them in a way that we get the message in between laughing and kind of shaking our head like, dang.
Yeah, we tried. That was the goal. Is nobody wants to be preached at.
Yeah.
No, nobody. I don't. No. Even if you're right, nobody wants to hear you preach.
No.
But for me, there was my goal, first and foremost, was to make everybody laugh. No different from when I started Ranger Up. I pictured the guys and women that I served with, and I wanted them to laugh at the hilarity of the show. So that was the first thing. But the second thing is I wanted to remind people that transition is hard.
Yes.
And that they're not weird for having a hard time in transition. And it's been really interesting because, we held 3 premieres that were all sold out, which was cool.
Oh, wow.
And you had people that were still in or had just gotten out that were like, man, like, this is what I'm feeling. I'm feeling like this is going to be a challenge, or I'm living this right now and it's so hard and I feel like there's no future in sight. But then you had the veterans that had been out for a long time, and they were like, I remember this, and it's so funny because it was such a short period of time, but it felt like it was forever. And, they're looking at it kind of like rose-colored lenses, but they recognized it, and they kind of, and then you had civilians, which was, believe it or not, about 50% of everyone that came to the premieres had never served in uniform.
They're curious.
But they actually saw in it not necessarily the military transition, but transitions they had gone through, relationship transitions, new jobs, new cities, whatever it is. And they found, like, they recognized all the people and challenges in the show and really enjoyed it. So that was cool for me too. And that was the goal. Is Range 15 was completely unapproachable if you aren't weird or you aren't in the military, because it just went so far.
Yes.
And Office Joe doesn't do that.
Right.
Like there's moments that it goes further than most TV shows by a long shot. There are no sacred cows.
Oh no, it's more reflective though. I mean, like, he does this, and you. So I'm definitely not going to give away the show, because you really have to stick through the whole thing. Because like the first one, I'm like, oh, that's kind of cute, haha. But then you really have to watch the whole series. I really would recommend, because when you get done, you're like, yeah. Then you kind of get it collectively. So I definitely encourage people, like, yes, you'll see the first one, and you'll kind of laugh, shake your head a little, but. And it's all over the top. Like, you got to imagine a cake with lots of frosting on it, right? Like, it's just really, it is, right? It's just very over the top, right?
It's over the top.
And so you take that, but the message is underneath that frosting. Like, you got to, once that frosting comes off, that message is there. It's still cake. Like, it's still in there,
I think what you said was right. Now, a lot of people love the first episode, but I hear a lot of people are like, hey, I'll get the text. I just watched episode 1 and 2, so funny, da-da-da. And then it's like the next day, it's like, I watched 3 and 4, like, oh my God, I can't believe it. Like,
right.
They're really in it. And then it's, okay, I watched 5 and 6, and like, we need a season 2. Like,
that's what happens. It's kind of like, oh, that's cute. Like, some people put some stuff together. It's veterans, haha. Like, it is funny. That's kind of how I was too. I was like, oh, that's cute, But I was like, no, it's only 6. Oh my God. And they're only 25, 30 minutes. I mean, they're not long.
They're a little longer.
Are they longer? How long have they?
Yeah.
They felt short to me. Maybe they were.
That's good. That's good. That
Yeah,
means
maybe they were. I thought they were only about 30 minutes. So how long did they go?
episode 1 and 2 are 28 minutes.
Yeah.
Episode 3 and 4 are 34 minutes.
Yeah.
Episode 5 is 38 minutes, and episode 6 is just shy of 45.
Yeah.
So
that last one was longer.
It's longer than most comedies, like pretty significantly. It's kind of the equivalent of having 12 episodes of most comedies.
Oh wow, I didn't realize that. But yeah,
Average
it goes
comedy is
quick.
22 minutes. Yeah.
Oh
The
wow.
average comedy is 22 minutes.
But we can we talk just a little bit about some of the characters, just in general.
Yeah.
I won't give anything away, I promise. But
Okay.
so Joe's the main character, and he's
the main
the guy that gets out of the military. He honestly was my favorite. He was like the cool guy. Like not like he was the veteran. I mean, he really was, and he is a veteran, correct? He's also
No. So that's the funny
he's
thing.
not. Oh, I thought he was one of the veterans.
He's one of the only non-veterans in the cast.
Oh, he did really good because I thought he was a veteran.
I wrestled with this.
Yeah.
So Dan Mercer, who plays the role,
Yeah.
he actually works at Dieseljack.
Yeah.
And I was very reticent to put an employee in the role because it's such an important role, and
Yeah, he's the main character.
People come and go.
Yeah.
And then also to have a non-veteran. And I actually reached out to Donnie O'Malley from Vet TV.
Mm-hmm.
His real name's Danny Mayer, and I was like, man, I'm struggling with this. And he was just like, is he the best guy for the job? I'm like, man, no one's come close. And he's like, well, then do it. So like, all right.
He was really good. I really thought he was a veteran. Yeah. And then
he was really good.
And
So
then
you want to know who was a veteran that no one thinks would be a veteran?
oh, let me guess. I mean, I forgot some of their names. Who was the short gentleman with oh God, when you say his name, I'll say yes. Yeah.
So
Go
the
ahead.
guy that plays the very liberal character, Raph.
Oh, Raph he's a veteran.
And guess which service?
Marines.
Yep. He's a Marine.
Now, yeah, all right, you definitely have to watch this when you have these tidbits in your head, because we will never give away the story, but to have that background.
When he told me that, I was surprised. I was like,
what did he do in the Marines?
Because most vets can kind of fade into like civilian life pretty well after a couple of years.
Yeah.
But Marines kind of tend, I mean, no offense, Marines, you guys kind of tend to be Marines forever.
You can pick them out.
You could be in the Marines for like 2 years, and like 30 years later, you're
still a
doing
Marine.
some job, and they're, and they're still like, like whatever Marine noises they make. I can't pronounce.
This is our terms of endearment that we talk about, right?
Yeah, and so here's this guy, he's playing this very emotional.
Liberal. Oh yeah.
He's got the long flowing locks.
He's the woke generation that everybody call it.
Tight pants.
Yes.
Yep, Marine.
Oh my gosh, that makes that whole thing even funnier.
It's so ridiculous, right?
Oh my God. And then you have to tell the story of, is it Karen?
Yep.
So Karen, I'll let you tell the story because I think this is so cute.
Yeah, so Karen is played by Suze Palmisciano, my wife. So Suzanne, when we finished the script, we brought the whole company together at our stage, and like every employee kind of like picked a role or roles they were going to read for, because after you write something, like a lot of times things look great on paper,
right?
But then you actually read them out loud, you realize the dialogue sucks, or it doesn't quite flow, or there's something off. You got to do multiple read throughs. So this was our first read through of the completed 6 episodes, and Suze was like, "I'll read for Karen." And like immediately as she's reading for Karen, like I'm looking around, everyone's smiling, we're all looking at each other, and we're like, "You've got to be Karen." And she's like, No. I'm not. Don't drag me into your stupid shit once again, Nick. But like everybody, Hollywood Heard, who produced the show, he spent 25 some odd years in Hollywood, did a lot of big, did Pirates of the Caribbean and Titanic and real movies. And he was like, "You're really good and you're perfect for this." So we kind of leaned on her for a month, and she finally broke and said, "Fine, I'll do it."
I
And
thought that was so funny.
she ended up being great.
She's brilliant. Oh no, yeah. Like I said,
She's a lot of people, especially women, have written to just say like, Karen is the best. Like she's my spirit animal, and
oh,
all this kind of stuff.
she really embodies a lot. Like she embodies that over perky, peppy, like that person that you're like, oh Lord, but then strong, right? And
Yeah,
really
yeah, she's not weak.
resilient. She's not weak when you. It's the same thing. You meet her and you're like, oh Lord, not this. And
Yeah,
then you see her and you're like, oh, and she's,
she's
getting
going
her.
through it.
Yeah, she's
She's
going through it.
trying. She is trying to keep her little company going,
Yes, and all the
and she,
trials and tribulations on it. Oh my God,
yep,
that
but
was
she
funny.
never loses her optimism. She just keeps it. She keeps on charging. So yeah, she was a great character, and obviously I'm biased, but Suzanne did a great job.
And then, so who were a couple? Who were the other ones in there? There were, and I apologize. I have grabbed the wrong paper and I don't have the
Oh, no
names in
worries.
front of me.
Yeah, so we had great performances by some very popular veterans, and
Mm-hmm.
Jared Taylor from Black Rifle Coffee plays an army recruiter next door, and his right hand guy
Those
is
two.
Austin von Letkeman, aka Mandatory Fun Day. Those two are, somebody at the last premiere described them as the two guys from the Muppets that just criticize
The
everybody.
old guys, like the
And I
two.
thought I thought that was the best description of like what they did. They were hilarious.
So it was. So who's the both gentlemen's names?
So it's Jared Taylor and Austin von Letkeman, aka Mandatory Fun Day, on all the
That's
social media things.
that's right. And a lot of when you guys see these two,
Yeah,
you'll
they're hilarious.
recognize him because he's all over TikTok. He started with all the army
Yep.
comedy, and I've seen
Yep.
him many, many, many times. And then the other one I saw too was, is it Ashley? That
Ashley Gutermuth. Yep.
Gudemuth that played
Yep.
the reporter. I've seen
She's
her all
hilarious.
over social media too.
Yeah, she is such a good sport,
He's
up for anything. And the thing about Ashley is like she's really supportive. And so I'm not gonna like I've asked Ashley to do a few things, and she's always surprised when she gets paid. She's like, "Oh, you're paying me?" I'm like,
oh,
"Yes, yes, Ashley. Like you were just a professional actor, and you spent days here, so yes." And she's like, "Oh, that's great." Like she's such a genuine, cool person.
I've loved watching her on social media. I've seen her
She's
many
great.
times, and she's a spouse. So for the audience, she is a veteran
She's
spouse,
an Air Force spouse. Her husband just
just
retired,
retired. Yeah, they were
and
talking about that.
yeah, and they just moved to New York City. So
Oh, they did.
yeah, they're in New
Oh,
York City now. But I just cast her in an Army Navy commercial that we did with the American Legion,
oh, how neat.
and,
Well,
and
go
she
ahead.
she did a great job with that, like a truly great job with that.
The
So
funniest thing she did was when she addressed. She goes, "Okay, buddy, I'm not a lesbian." My God, I literally was gonna cry. So,
yep,
stereotypically she has shorter hair and she's petite and
yeah,
and
yeah.
so she's like, let's just clear the air. She's like,
She
my
she hears it
husband,
all.
oh God, but she's brilliant. I really like her. She's just got a good personality and
One of the funniest people that you're going to meet in person, also. So
oh
not all comedians are funny in person.
yes,
It's just like, I mean, nor should they have to be, right?
yes,
But she's naturally funny. Like everything is a sarcastic comment. And she's
it's her witty.
very quick on her feet.
That's like Ron White used to say, I have to stop. He had to stop for a while being a comedian. He's like, I'm only funny when I'm drunk. He says, I gotta stop for a while like that.
Yeah,
But yeah, she is. She's just naturally. You can tell though, like her
yeah,
personality is just kind of
yep.
naturally like that. So, all right, who are some of the other characters?
Tim Kennedy played a villain. He played Silas Wraithmore.
Oh
He played
yes,
the 500-pound guy that was wheeling around in a chair in episode 2.
yes.
Jack Mandeville played the mogul Dick Richards in episode 5.
He was, yeah, that was, yeah, you portrayed a really greasy, slimy person very well.
Jack Rea played the EMT. He's a very famous first responder. He's
Yes.
on TikTok. And then Eric Tanzi played the police officer. He's a social media police officer as well. So there were a lot of people that kind of turned up. And of course, Vince Vargas, who, he did 4 seasons as a main character in Mayans FC. And he came out and did a great job as kind of Joe's mentor, local mentor. So
That one was hilarious. Like that, I like that. And again, we're not going to talk about what happened in it, but yes, he was that local one. However, you played the military mentor or the
I played his former boss. And
yes.
my character lives in California, so I'm not ever in the room with him, but am always giving him he calls every day and
Gives
needs
a
advice.
report. Yeah, he would call
Yeah.
in, and what was hilarious was that Nick would always be wearing the VFW hat.
Always wearing the American Legion
American
hat.
Legion, that's right. Sorry, not
Yep.
VFW.
Yep.
American Legion hat. And
Yep.
I would just, it didn't matter where you were. And we'll leave it at
Doesn't
that
matter.
because
Yep. In bed, wearing the hat.
oh my God, it was funny.
In the bathtub wearing the hat. And it's a little joke, right? So there's kind of 2 types of American Legion members. There are the guys that love to wear the hat, and there are the guys that you almost have to pin down to put the hat on.
Put the hat on him, yeah.
And so, Vince plays the latter and I play the former.
Oh
you
my
know?
God, yeah, correct, yeah. And it was good because, like I said, throughout the series, like these wild things were happening. And
Yeah.
again, like you picked topics, like some of them I'm like, oh, damn. And you're like, yeah, that happens like that. And then you're kind of like his Jiminy Cricket. You know what I mean?
That's right. That's
And
exactly right.
and you're saying to him like, hey, you don't have to keep this, all the habits don't need to come over into the civilian world. You can drop some of those and you're
But he always misconstrues the advice.
oh yes, yeah.
Every time. Yep.
It really was good. When it ended, I was like, oh, and I was the same way. I'm like, oh, we really do need a season 2 in this. Like this is, now I want to know what the next thing. So is that in the works?
We're hoping to do that. We would love to have a long-term partnership somewhere. That's the piece. Because right now, we're selling it on those 3 platforms.
Yeah.
And, it obviously works better when you have like a permanent home. And that's something we're trying to figure out right now is where are we going to land? And once you have that, season 2 is a lot easier. So it's not super hard to fund the seasons, because we own this company, and it's a lot easier for me to make something than it would be for somebody trying to make something out of Hollywood.
Where'd you film it? Where was it filmed?
North Carolina.
Well, like what was that? Your office? Was that like
Our office. Yeah. So
that really
basically
is your office?
Really, yeah, it's really my office. Yeah. So I bought this office, I don't know, a year and change ago.
Yeah.
And basically we were like, hey, you can either work from home or you can work at the stage because we have a stage as well. And, if you're not involved in production, and so our employees just kind of picked what they wanted to do. And then, we just turned the office into a set and saved ourselves, probably $100,000.
Wow. That is brilliant. That is brilliant. I think it's great. All right, let's wrap this up. There is, I could talk to you forever. I mean, you're very interesting and you're kind of got a brain like mine. It's a little squirrel brain. And you're like, now what can we try? And you're fearless. And I do appreciate that. And not fearless in a reckless way, but fearless as in, well, if we don't try, it's definitely a no. And I say that to people all the time. I'm like, they're like, well, should I? And I'm like, well, it's definitely a no if you don't ask. So 100%. You just went to a 50-50 shot if you ask the question.
That's right.
So why not, right? So that's awesome. So any words of advice that you want to give the audience on transitioning, and that can be a broad term. We're talking about military, but you are correct. Transition, any big change, it's hard.
Sure. If you haven't transitioned yet, try to build a plan before you get out. It's not going to work out exactly the way you expect, but having a plan will ease the anxiety of the unknown significantly. Once you are transitioning, give yourself grace. It's not going to go perfectly. You are going to have challenges. You're not as strong as you thought you were, but you are stronger than you thought you were. It's a weird thing.
Yeah.
So you're going to fail and you're going to succeed, and you just be okay with that. And there isn't like a set thing that you have to do. And then lastly, always be working towards something, right? When veterans are stagnant, they are dangerous.
Yes.
When you're not doing anything, we tend to get into some bad habits, and those habits can be just sitting around. Those habits can be drinking too much. Those habits can be, folks that are on painkillers. Like we all know, where things can go. Yep. But when you are working on something, even if it doesn't succeed, even if it's temporary, having something that you're gunning for, we also tend to fixate, and we tend to charge towards the mission. And what you'll find is that the more missions that you accomplish, and sometimes those missions are simple things like getting a job or, getting through school. And sometimes those missions are, building a company or, writing a book or whatever it is, whatever that you care about. Your life gets more interesting, and you start to appreciate it more. You start to be more comfortable. Like, I look at my military career and I'm like, I didn't do anything very cool compared to any of my friends. All my friends have had much cooler military careers than I have. But it was the foundation, whether you're talking about teamwork, grit, discipline, it's the foundation of everything I've done since. And I do think I've had a pretty cool career as a civilian, and I've been able to do lots of things that not everybody gets to do.
Yeah.
And all of that comes from that foundation. And so instead of thinking about it like, man, I was a E6 or I was a O4 and I should get respect from people because I had those roles, think about it like, hey, what did I actually learn? I learned that it is, that if I don't quit, I can get through something. I learned that the mission often, it does not have clear details, but I still need to get it done. And so I had to do superhuman things to figure it out. I learned that if I build a strong team, we can accomplish anything. Mm-hmm. Well, you take those lessons and you're a little humble going into those first couple of jobs while you're learning how to be a civilian. All of a sudden, you're at a huge advantage over everybody else. You just have to pay a little bit of a price during that process. And when a lot of times guys will balk at that, and it's not usually younger guys. So it's interesting, and there's no insult here. It's just human nature. I don't ever see like E4s, E5s, O2, O3s have this kind of unwillingness to take a step back, but O4s, O5s, O6s, E8s, E9s, like there is an expectation that other people appreciate what they've done. And the way that I always try to explain it to people is, what would you do if, the VP of Boeing, having never served a day in his or her life, decided to quit Boeing and join the military and say, hey, I ran, this huge department at a Fortune 100 company, so I want to start as a sergeant major or a colonel. Like, everyone would laugh.
Right.
Be like, no, that's not the way it works. Like, go to basic training, clown, and then let's see where things go from there. There would be no adjustment in that direction. But we leave the military and say, hey, I was a colonel, or I was a sergeant major, or I was a whatever, and we expect that to be acknowledged. And again, I'm not saying that like it shouldn't be in some form or fashion.
Well, it should be honored, but should it? But yes, like.
Well, I think it's like everything else, right?
Yeah.
What is your resume? Well, okay, this person has leadership skills.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what that says. That's what it should say. Like when they see the rank, that's what should be associated with it.
But, can they lead without formal authority? Can they lead? Like there's a lot of things because, when a colonel tells you something and your director or VP boss tell you something, I mean, like, yeah, you got to listen in both cases, but it's not the same.
No.
It's just not the same.
Well, there's no UCMJ coming after you.
Yeah, because I could just be like, you know what, I don't want to.
Yeah, pound sand. Have a good day.
And then you can feel like I can get fired or whatever, but I'm not going to prison. I'm not insubordinate. I'm not, it's a different thing. So, having just knowing that and moving forward, you'll go a long way. Veterans can do anything. I am so bullish on, veterans that want to do good are unstoppable. And I have to say that want to do good because, I mean, some of us are pains in the butt.
I agree. I think that keeping it humble, and I always say, honor your time. Like you have good memories of it, and honor that and be proud of what you did. But I have to agree with the statement. Nobody really cares.
Nobody cares.
They don't care. They really don't care that you were Colonel so-and-so or whatever. And I know you and I have talked about this, and I fully believe it because, when I left the military, anything I do now, I'm an author and I do some other stuff, and you will not see my rank on there. You're not even in my bio. You will see that, that I was a nurse or whatever it was. And it's because that was my time then. I actually, you know what the weirdest thing was? And then we'll wrap this up. But the funny story, one of the things we did recently was, it was a very simple gesture, but we made ornaments and we brought them to one of the veteran senior centers here outside San Antonio and Floresville, and at a senior center here in New Braunfels for the Meals on Wheels to give to veterans that are more isolated, right? Very simple gesture. And I said to people, I'm like, so I'm thinking about veterans, and these are older men and women, and back in the day, I said, put your name on the back of it with rank, like to associate, right? So we did. So people made all the ornaments, and I'm sitting at home, and I said to my husband, I'm like, hey, we got a couple more here. Like, let's make these up, because I want to give as many as I can. Yeah. And I said, sign them. And he's like, really? I'm like, yeah. And I did too. And it was the weirdest feeling. And even when I brought them, I said to one of the people, I'm like, okay, like I signed them and it's kind of weird. And she looked at me like, what? And she looked at the back, she goes, that's cool. And didn't blink an eye. And I'm like, oh my God, because I don't do that. But I did that intentionally for an older generation to relate back, right? So it is funny, like honor that, be proud of it. But please, let's remember our time in a good way.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with acknowledging.
Absolutely not.
Your accomplishments, because it's like it's no joke to you pin on 05, 06.
It is an accomplishment. Yeah,
it's a big deal, but it's a big deal the same way. Like, and again, I'm not minimizing anything, but I'm saying there were things in my life that were a big deal at the time.
Yeah. Don't let it impede what you're doing in the civilian world. I think that's the simplest thing. Don't let it impede. Don't let that impede, because you're amazing and you have all these skills, and go be fearless out there.
You are much better off having somebody else go, he was a sergeant major, she was a colonel, than you are like, when people that are not, again, because all my classmates that are still in the military now.
Yeah.
They're all either colonels or generals.
Yeah.
Right? All of them. Because that's the year group I'm in.
Yeah, exactly.
I am not a spring chicken anymore.
You're not? I am.
No. Unfortunately, you are. But I'm not. But, and so when you have somebody that is like, they've been out for a while and they introduce themselves as like major or something, to me, it comes across as Like if I introduced myself as like all-state wrestler Nick Palmisciano,
Right.
like it's like, bro, no one cares what you did in high school. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, what are you talking
It's
about?
dragging that backpack with you and
Yeah, it's there's
free yourself.
it, it's a part of you. It is an important part of you. It is a building block that allows you to do the next thing.
Yeah.
And there may be a time or place, if you're speaking to a military audience,
Right.
absolutely critical that you acknowledge this is who I was and this is what I did, because that's important to that audience. And
It's
it might even
context.
be,
Yeah.
yeah, it might even be important as an introduction to something, but
Yeah.
it cannot be the thing that you constantly go to.
Well,
Because
it holds you back. It holds you back. I really do think that when we have to learn, and we're rabbit holing a little bit here, but learning things like no, like we don't understand the word no because we have a mission to get done. And I think we say all this in the context of not poking at a single person, right? But we know, because we've been through it, these are things that actually will hold you back.
yeah, when you live in the past, when you live on your past accomplishments, you cannot create new accomplishments.
Right,
And
exactly.
life is lived in the moment and is lived leaning forward. And the past should only be to teach us what not to do
Reflect on, right?
as we keep moving.
I get it. I agree with every bit of that. So that's our wise words of wisdom for everybody, because we want you guys all to thrive. And who knows, maybe you'll find Nick and be in his next series.
There you go.
You never know. Nick, where can they find information? What's your websites?
Yeah, officejoeshow.com or Office Joe Show, basically everywhere, on all of the things, Instagram and TikTok, etc. But again, you can just search for it on Amazon, on Apple, and on Google Play /YouTube, and it is there. It is for sale for a very reasonable amount.
It is reasonable. It's less than $20.
And every, you're basically funding season 2, so.
And if you like it, go write a review. I can't stress enough that
100%.
reviews are important.
They are, and especially like Amazon reviews, you can only review it if you've purchased it.
Yes.
And we're a perfect 5 right now, but we definitely could use more reviews.
Yes, and people like reviews. And if you do have something you don't like, do it constructively, because believe it or not, that is actually sometimes very highly desired and welcomed, is to have constructive criticism.
100%.
Yeah, I know that as an author, and it's very hard to get constructive criticism.
Yep.
So,
True.
all right. I think that's everything. Nick, it was an enormous pleasure, literally from the bottom of my heart, to have you guys reach out and come on the show and to get to meet you. I love everything you're doing. I'm going to put you up there with one of the most interesting guy, minus the beard.
I appreciate it.
So, all right, everybody, we're going to wrap this episode up. We hope you like this. And like I told you guys, if you like what you're hearing, write a review. We are on every platform you can think of. I couldn't even name them all. Share the information, hit the like button, all those cool things that they tell us we need to do in social media, and I know very little about, but I repeat it over and over. Give us hearts and likes and shares and reviews, because it really does help. The more you guys talk about it, the further this gets pushed out, whether it's a show like Nick's, whether it's a podcast like ours, all that really helps. So from all of us here at Beyond the Frontline and our parent podcast at Coming Home Well, we greatly appreciate you guys, and you all have an awesome week.
Thanks for listening to Beyond the Frontline, a podcast of Coming Home Well. Join us every other Wednesday. And if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and review. Thanks again. And until all are home and all are well.